All right, good morning, Crossroads. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Samantha MacIntyre Olson, and I am the student pastor here. And today I am excited to be kicking off our new series called Bigger Houses. Now, I don't know about you, but when I first heard that, I was like, that's kind of a weird title for a sermon series. And I went to Pastor Jake, and I was like, what's this Bigger Houses thing all about? And he said, well, it's based on a country song. And I was like, well, sign me up. Because I don't know if you know, I'm from Oklahoma. I'm a bit of a country girl. I went to 4-H camp. I raised sheep. My sisters were FFA presidents, if that means anything to you. All right? So I busted out my boots, and I pulled up the song, and it all made sense. All right? Do you want to hear it? Well, too bad. They said because of copyright, we can't play it. But what I can do is I can read you the lyrics to the chorus, all right? So that's what we can do. Here is the chorus to the song Bigger Houses by Dan Shay. There's always going to be a higher high you could chase for the rest of your life. Greener grass in the yard next door, or a shined-up Chevy a little newer than yours. You're never going to fill an empty cup if what you got is still not enough. The thing about happiness I've found is it don't live in bigger houses. And that's a solid country song right there. Now, I've been told by my husband my accent comes out when I talk about home, so if that happens, I apologize. I have no control, but the twang might happen. But this country song, part of why I like country music is there's always a deeper meaning. Okay, not always, but there's fun or meaning to pretty much every country song. And this one I really like because it's a reminder that while many people think that the next big thing is going to make them happier, maybe the bigger house or the better car, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you have if you're looking to things and physical possessions or worldly achievements for happiness. Because happiness isn't found in bigger houses. Happiness is found in being content with what you have. Happiness is found in looking to God. Ironically, this made me think of when my brother just bought a new house. My older brother, I love him. His name is Angus. I have 13 nieces and nephews, not quite as many as Jake, but I'm working on it, okay? And my brother Angus, he has given me 4 of the 13, and he says he might not be done. So Jake, watch out, okay? But these 4 children, I love them. They are spunky little kids, and he had them very close together. When his 4th was born, his first just turned 3, like 3 weeks before. There's twins in the middle. They turned 3 yesterday. They are rascals, and I love these kids. But like many of you, my brother works really, really hard. And he sacrifices a lot, and he works long days, hard days. He works outside so that he can support his family. My brother regularly works 12-hour days outside in all kinds of weather. I wear boots because they make me think of home. He wears them so he doesn't break his toe. You know what I mean? Like, that's my brother. And he sacrifices a lot so that his wife, Jenna, who's a superwoman, can stay at home and raise those babies. And he's been with this company for a while, and he was able to recently purchase a new house for their family, which is good because they didn't have enough rooms for the kids they had, even with the twins sharing. And so they texted us, and they were like, hey, we just got this house. We're super excited. And so Samuel, my husband, and I, we were like, good siblings. We oohed and we awed over the Zillow listing. And we haven't seen it yet, but they moved in a few months ago. And when I call home and I ask my parents, and I'm like, so how are Angus and Jenna liking the new house? And I expect to hear things like, oh, it's great, the kids have so much space. Or there's land for the animals. Like my brother has a cow named Chuck, after Chuck roast, so you don't forget what it's there for, okay? Yeah, and there's goats and there's chickens, and so I'm expecting there's all this room for the animals, and the kids can play, and there's appliances from this century, unlike the old house, right? Like, that's what I'm expecting. But that's not what anybody says. Actually, no matter who I talk to, whether it's my dad or my mom or my sister-in-law, all I hear is really, it's awesome that your brother gets to be home more. Because my brother's old house was 30 minutes away from the home base of his company. So his 12-hour days were often 13-hour days. And his time with his kids was really just limited to Saturday and Sunday, like I know many of you who work long overtime hours can relate to. But the new house is only 5 minutes away. And so he gets almost an extra hour a day with those crazy babies. And when work allows for it, he even gets to go home for lunch sometimes. And that extra hour a day, that occasional lunch at home, is all I hear about. The happiness that they have found isn't because they got a bigger house. The happiness they found was from the things that you just can't buy. As the song says, you're never going to fill an empty cup if what you've got is still not enough. And so over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at this idea of contentment, this idea that chasing more isn't where happiness is found. That as followers of Jesus, we aren't meant to chase the more of this world. We aren't called to this relentless pursuit of keeping up with the Joneses. We're not called to have an Instagram perfect kitchen or to stand in line for that Starbucks barista cup before it sells out, right? That's not what we're called to. We're not called to the more of what the world calls us to. We are just meant to chase more Jesus. And as we chase more Jesus, we will see this one simple truth. And it's a truth found in Philippians 4:13. Now, who here knows Philippians 4:13? You want to prove it? Let's say it together. Ready? I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Good job. Now, let me tell you something. That verse, I have a weird relationship with that verse. Because when I hear Philippians 4:13, I think of people doing dumb stuff, you know? Because I think that for some reason, modern American Christians have heard this verse and decided it belongs on their workout clothes. And it's the reason you should put weight on the bar that you are not prepared to lift or do dumb stuff with boldness, right? You guys ever seen people do that? All right, you want to watch some dumb boldness right now? Okay, so my husband and I just went on a vacation to the Smoky Mountains. And one day we were driving and we pulled over to look at this river, and he was like, "Film me, babe. I'm gonna go down and cross that river." And I was like, I don't know about that. That doesn't really look crossable. And he's like, "I'm gonna do it anyway." And he said, "And film me." And I did. And as I was filming him, some ladies walked up and they're like, "Is he really gonna try to do this?" And I was like, "I guess so." And he posted it on his social media, so I'm gonna show it to you right now. You ready to watch some dumb boldness? Let's watch my husband try to cross a river. I'm so glad he made me film that. I love it. That's some dumb boldness right there, right? Now, he was feeling bold, and he knew. Afterwards, I don't know if this is real, but he told me afterwards, he was like, "I knew I would probably fall in, but I just wanted to try." But you know what he didn't do? He did not justify it when I said, "What are you doing?" by saying, "Babe, Philippians 4:13, I can cross the river through Christ who gives me strength." Okay? No, he knows better. He's a pastor's husband, all right? He just did dumb stuff because, he's a man and sometimes that's what they do, right? That's why women, we live longer. Our insurance premiums are lower, okay? The best part about being a woman might be the prerogative to have a little fun, but I think the best part about being a man is the prerogative to be a little dumb. You know what I mean? All right, now I promise I have one country reference left the whole sermon. Okay, I promise. I'm gonna put aside. But the truth is, when it comes to Philippians 4:13, sadly, so many people just pull this verse right out of context, and they water it down, and they just kind of do whatever they want with it. But when it comes to reading the Bible, that's not what we're supposed to do. When it comes to reading the Bible, we're not just supposed to pull a piece out, make it say whatever we want, and go from there. Now, when it comes to reading the Bible, I want to teach you a phrase. It's your first fill in the blank of the day. You ready for it? Context is king. When you're trying to understand what the Bible is saying, context is king. Now, I can hear it right now. Somebody's going to come up to me in the lobby later and say, "Well, Samantha, Jesus is king." Amen. Okay, yes, you are correct. Jesus is king. He is the king of all things. But when it comes to understanding Scripture, I want you to never forget just how important it is to read the Scripture within context so that you can understand it properly. Because we aren't here to make the Bible say what we want it to say. We're here to see what did the Bible actually say. So I want you to remember that when it comes to context is king for understanding, all right? See, you did with it. I made it rhyme. You'll remember it now, maybe. But there's two types of context when it comes to reading the Bible that's important to remember to figure out what the human author and what God was originally intending to say. The two types of context are historical context and textual context. Now, historical context is asking what was happening in this time? What was happening in that world? What was happening in the culture? What issues were there? What was going on? Understanding the historical context can help us better understand the world the author was writing in and the things that the original audience would have immediately picked up on that we just don't because we live in 2025 in the USA and we don't live in 32 in, Rome. It's different, right? So that's what historical context helps us better understand. The next is textual context. And textual context, it's a little more simple. It's just saying, what does the Bible say? So when you look at a verse, like Philippians 4:13, you want to first then look at the paragraph that the verse comes from. And then you want to look at the chapter, and then you want to look at the book, and then the Bible as a whole. Fun fact, those verse markers and chapter markers are not part of the original Bible. Like when Paul was writing the Bible, he didn't go verse 1, then verse 2. No, it was a tool they added in the 1200s, meant to be just a tool to help us better, easily reference specific pieces of the Bible. But sadly, many people and many pastors over the decades have used what was meant to be a helpful tool to instead manipulate Scripture and ignore the context. And that's not what we want to do. We want to look at the context. We want to see, what did Paul say? What was God saying to us? That's why we look at the context. And when you look at the context, you can understand what was really going on. You see, context is king for understanding. So let's look at the context, right? So this is the book of Philippians. Philippians was written by our boy Paul. If you've been in church for more than a few weeks, you've probably heard about Paul, all right? He wrote a lot of the New Testament. He was the first great missionary of the church that spread the gospel throughout the Roman Empire. And he wrote this letter to a church in the Greek city of Philippi. And he helped this church get started. And when he wrote this book, he was under house arrest for sharing the gospel. He was waiting trial. And if we had time to read the whole book today, which we don't right here, but you do when you get home, so I expect you're going to, right? So you can make sure that I'm actually saying the truth up here, all right? You would see that in the beginning, Paul starts by talking about the fact that he is under arrest, but he doesn't talk about it in anger. He instead tells the people he's writing to that being under arrest has actually helped advance the gospel. It has given the people around him more boldness in their faith. He says that in chapter 1, verse 12. He talks about whether he lives or dies, he has purpose because of Jesus in chapter 1, verse 21. He tells them that no matter their circumstances, they need to keep living a life that tells of Jesus. 127. He goes on in the second chapter to talk about humility and serving others the way Jesus did in chapter 2, verse 3, to do it without grumbling, chapter 2, verse 14, and how in comparison to knowing Jesus, everything else really doesn't matter, chapter 3, verse 8. And even though we are confident in our salvation, and we should be confident in our salvation, we should not sit back, but we should continue to strive to serve Jesus, chapter 3, verse 12. He talks about the people who have helped him and have served him and have encouraged him in chapter 4, verse 2. And then he tells them to always rejoice in the Lord, chapter 4, verse 4. And that's when we arrive at the paragraph where this famously taken out of context verse lives. So if you'll read with me, I want to read the paragraph of Philippians chapter 4, verses 10 through 13. I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you have renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you have been concerned and you had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstance. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through him who gives me strength. Now that you see the context, it's a little more powerful, isn't it? Paul's not saying that because of God I can achieve whatever I want. He's saying that because God is enough, I have enough. That's my big idea for you today. Because God is enough, I have enough. In every situation, in every circumstance, God is enough, and I have enough. Of all people, Paul had room to speak to this. You see, we talked about studying the bigger picture of the Bible and the historical context, and when you do that, there's 3 things about Paul that you'll learn that make this even more powerful, that give it even more weight. The first thing about Paul is that Paul had privilege. Paul had privilege. You see, Paul was a citizen of Rome. And when it came to the ancient world, being a Roman citizen was a golden ticket. All right, not everybody was a Roman citizen, especially not everybody around. Most of the people Paul worked and traveled with did not have Roman citizenship. But if you were a Roman citizen, you could not be beaten without permission from like a higher court. You could not be imprisoned without trial, and if you were not a Roman citizen, you didn't have a right to a fair trial. But Paul, as a Roman citizen, could get out of being flogged. And when he was arrested, he could appeal to have his case brought directly to Caesar. Paul is where he is when he writes this letter because a mob wanted to kill him for preaching about Jesus, and he used his golden Roman citizenship to appeal to Caesar, which allowed him to be put under house arrest while he awaited trial. So Paul had legal and social privilege. The next thing about Paul is that Paul had position. In the Jewish world, Paul was something called a Pharisee. So he had been trained to know the Bible. And let me tell you, Pharisees knew the Bible. He spent years studying. He studied under a prominent teacher at the time, so even the term Pharisee was a big deal, but who he studied under was an even bigger deal. So to anyone who was a Jew, this gave him position and made him someone worth listening to. Additionally, he had actually seen the resurrected Jesus. Jesus appeared directly to Paul, calling him to serve. And so for both Jews at the time and early Christians, Paul had position. And finally, Paul had persecution. Even though Paul was a Roman citizen, and he could have used that Roman citizenship to escape being beaten and flogged, many times he chose not to. Many times, Paul chose to remain quiet about his status so that he would suffer alongside his fellow brothers and sisters as they sought to advance the gospel. In Acts 14, you see this, where Paul is stoned by a mob and almost killed. In Acts 16, he was whipped in Philippi. He was imprisoned many different times. In fact, one time, people were threatening his life so much while he was in prison that the Roman authorities had to smuggle him to a different jail under armed guard in Acts 23. Paul experienced great persecution. Paul was bold about his faith, and in turn, he experienced persecution. So Paul had privilege, Paul had position, and he had persecution. So with that in mind, let's read it again. Philippians 4:10-13. I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you have renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you have been concerned but had no opportunity to show it. I am not saying this because I am in need. For I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through him who gives me strength. In context, that passage is so much more powerful. Whether I am in prison and under persecution or I am in a good place, it doesn't matter because Christ is the one who strengthens me. Or as the Common English Bible translates it, I can endure all of these things through the power of the one who gives me strength. I like how the Message paraphrases it this way. Whatever I have, wherever I am, I can make it through anything in the one who makes me who I am. Because God is enough, I have enough. You know, there's a song we're going to sing here in a little bit. It's called Jireh. Maybe you've heard it. And I think it's so powerful because the term Jehovah Jireh comes from Genesis 22. And in Genesis 22, Abraham has taken his son Isaac up to sacrifice per the Lord's instruction. And the Lord stops Abraham's hand and provides for him an animal to sacrifice. And in that place, Abraham calls it Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. God is enough. I have enough. And so today, as we begin this series, I propose that we lay to rest the pursuit of more. That we lay down this desire to chase what the world tells us we need to be. To stop trying to keep up with our neighbors so that instead we can choose to live in the reality that Paul knew. The reality that God is enough, and that is enough. Because he is enough, I have enough. Contentment doesn't come from getting a promotion. Contentment doesn't come from your bank account hitting some magical, mythical number. Contentment doesn't come from finally getting that forever dream house. No, contentment is from Philippians 4:10-13. It's found in knowing that no matter what, when we have our eyes on God, when we have our eyes on the kingdom, we can be content. On a practical level, what this means is just stop looking at everyone around you and trying to compare yourself. And instead, just be content with where you are. Just be happy with where you are. Work where you are, knowing that God is right there with you. Another way to put it is this. Stop looking at your neighbor's house and start watering the lawn that God has already given you. Stop looking at your neighbor's house and start watering the lawn God already gave you. Because he is enough. Wherever you find yourself, you have enough. Whether you just bought your dream house or you just moved in with family because you can't afford rent, you're okay. Because God is your strength. You can lean into him every day. And when you do, the joy is better and the fear is lighter. Whether you're waiting for that test result to tell you you're finally going to be a parent or mourning yet another loss, or find yourself in the chaos of the toddler years, or the turmoil of the teen years, or the uncertainty of the empty nester years, you're going to be okay. Because God is your strength. And God is with you when you cry, whether they're tears of joy or tears of sadness and fear and frustration. He's going to wipe those tears. You don't have to strive so hard to be perfect, to be that perfect mother or be that perfect father. All you need to do is lean into the only perfect Father and let him help you, because he is enough. Whether you feel like everything in life is finally falling into place or everything that you had planned for your life has suddenly fallen apart, you're going to be okay, because God is enough, and he will walk with you in the days and years to come, whatever they hold. Stop looking at your neighbor's house and just water that lawn that God gave you. Now, you ready for my final country reference? I told you it was coming. I waited till the end. I want to end by reading to you the lyrics of another country song. And I think this song, it summarizes it really, really well. It's a song called Getting Good. There's no G. It's Getting, apostrophe, Good, by an artist called Lauren Elena. And this is how I'd like to end our time together. These are her words. Once I fall in love, then I'll be happy. But then you fall in love, and there's still a hole. Once I get some money, it'll all be easy. But then you get that money, and you still feel broke. Once I get a little older, I won't worry. But then you get older, and it don't feel like it should. I'm thinking once I learn to grow right where I'm planted, maybe that's when life starts getting good. Once I get a car that don't stall in the morning, I can make it anywhere I want, just wait. But I can see it right now, sitting in my driveway, afraid if I take it out, I'll chip the paint. Once I get a house that I can hang my hat on, I'll bet I want to build a bigger one if I could. I'm thinking once I learn to grow right where I'm planted, maybe that's when life starts getting good. I'm afraid of both my parents dying. I call my dad, and he answers right away. But I don't hear a word, because I'm thinking about what hasn't happened yet, but will someday. And we hang up the phone before I know it. I'm crying over a conversation that my fear took. I'm thinking once I learn to soak up every moment, I'll realize my life is already good. Thank God that my life is already good. Because God is enough. You have enough. Stop looking at what everybody else has. Stop trying to strive for the things the world tells you you need, and just focus on the one who has everything you need. Start focusing on the one who is the source of your strength and the source of contentment, and realize your life is already good. God, thank you that our lives, in the ups, in the downs, in the plenty and in the want, in the waiting, in the celebration, in the mourning, our lives are already good. Jehovah Jireh, thank you for providing enough.